G'day golfers. Ever found yourself redirecting blame and making excuses after having an absolute shocker on a golf course? I know that I have. Range was closed, I was a little cold, didn't warm up, I hit it in those 3 old divots. Then we have the podcast for you. We focus on how to fundamentally own your swing. Strike it pure and consistently shoot in the 70s. Be it if you're a weekend hack, retired and playing daily, a school phenom or a tour professional. We present and discuss facts and physics pertaining to golf, trying to keep our ego and opinion at bay. We dispel myths such as keep your head down, bend your knees, or my all-time favourite, game improvement irons. So stop drinking that mythical Kool-Aid and have a sip of ours. I think you'll find it both inspiring and refreshing. I'm Scott Young, founder of Swing, PGA professional and ex-tour player. Welcome to Pivot the Path. G'day golfers and welcome to Pivot the Path. Delighted to have you with us. We hope you've had a fantastic Memorial weekend. What's it mean to us? We're a huge military family with Rosie's dad serving in the Navy. Our nephew Dawson's currently in the National Guard, just returning from a deployment down at the border. We've got cousin Brian, who's a ranger. He's one of the most impressive young men I've ever met, and a dear friend. And we've got Uncle John. We've got all the. My grandfather was Australia's chief test pilot during World War II. So we're a huge military family. So for us, this weekend means everything. It means thanks. And so we hope that you said thanks in your own way. We come and live up in a little town in Connecticut, and this town, in my opinion, is phenomenal. So what they do is they have the servicemen and women, they march in the front of the parade. The entire town shuts down. We've got every fire truck. We had a 1930 fire truck known to man that's out. We've got ambulances and paramedics and EMTs. And all the servicemen and women come out, and it's our chance to say, hey, thanks for... Then they have all the sporting teams, and they have historical cars, and it's a procession through town. It's just classic Americana. We do a 5K run the day before where I tell you, most of the town comes out, and then you've got mums and dads and grandpas. There was a grandpa running with, it was his granddaughter, and this guy would have been 80 plus, and he was kicking this granddaughter who was about 10 or so's backside. It's just a phenomenal weekend for our town. So I hope that your town does the same. Really important. Before we get into the improvement pivot point, which, to be brutally honest, I've spent a lot of time on this weekend. Some of our videos from previous about gear and bounce has gone somewhat viral. And when a video goes kind of viral, 100,000 views or whatever it is, there comes a lot of upside and downside from that. The upside is that a ton of new followers have found Swing, which is awesome. The downside is that a lot of people are in a bit of a dark place and they take to social media to vent their frustration. So I thought it was a great opportunity to keep to our brand, which is high and tight on facts and figures, to get you guys to own your swing and break 75, break 80 every time you play. So that's what our brand stands for. And I thought it was a lovely opportunity to actually discuss some of the really negative comments that have been thrown my way in a really open and factual way. So we'll get a little bit on that a little later. But again, our brand is about keeping things high and tight on facts, physics, and physiology. And I think that's what we're here to try to do. And I think a lot of the messaging gets lost on opinion rather than facts. Just to close on that, we're a very different brand, remember. The golf industry is a $75 billion industry controlled by about 7 players. And we're not trying to be disruptive in any way. We're just presenting facts. And we're a really different new brand. We're one of the few vertically integrated brands, from making clubs, physical therapy, training, improvement. We've got our apparel. And so we're an improvement-based brand, and it gives us a really fresh opinion, because up until 2 or 3 weeks, we're brand agnostic. We really don't care what the brand is that you follow. And that allows us to be really fresh in our approach. So we'll get onto that a little bit more about that later. Okay, so moving on to news from the fairway. We had one of my greatest Monaco Grand Prix F1s this weekend. I would love to go to Monaco. We were nearly there umpteen years ago when I was backpacking through Europe. I never quite got there. Shout out Scotty Phillips. We should have gone to Monaco. Anyway, the McLarens came first and third with Lando Norris winning his first Monaco. So that was really, really cool. In Knoxville, we had the Korn Ferry event, and we had a lot of first-time winners this week on PGA and LPGA and DP Tour. So we had the Swede Pontus Nyholm won his first US-based event. So absolutely power to you, mate. He had 88 starts for his first win here in US soil. So I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about the big Swede, and I just love seeing first-time winners, as we've talked about. The LPGA Tour headed to Mexico for their tour event, tour stop, and we had first-time rookie. Always love when rookies win. We had the Japanese lass Chisato Iwai, who started birdie par, birdie, 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 birdie in her fourth round. And so she absolutely crushed it, closing with a 66. And she's a fresh face. We're going to see a ton more from her. And it's always great when a rookie wins the LPGA event. Notice Nelly Court's been a little quiet, so we're not sure if she's working on a technique, having some family life. So always interested in, hopefully Nelly comes back to Winner's Circle. DP Tour, we had the Norwegian Kristoffer Reitan. Now, this kid came out with an explosive 62 to win his first DP Tour event. All these first-time winners, it's so awesome. He actually won in a playoff, but firing 62 to get in the playoff. So all these fresh young faces suggest that golf's in a pretty good spot. So fantastic to you. No live events. Then that leads us to the PGA Tour, where we had the Charles Schwab down at Fort Worth, Texas. And we had Ben Griffin win his first PGA Tour event. Now, he won a couple of weeks ago in the foursomes, and they said that was his first PGA Tour event. But really, in my opinion, individual events, the first PGA Tour event. So shout out, Ben. I played with him a couple of years ago at Sea Island. We played about 10 holes, and just a very normal guy. In fact, I believe when we played with him, he was kind of taking a hiatus off his golf, which is only a few years ago. And fast forward 4 or 5 years, and he's now a PGA Tour winner, and he's away. And just a very consistent human being. I only spent a couple of hours with him, and a very consistent golf game. And so, as we know, your golf game emulates kind of who you are and your personality. If you're aggressive, you'll play aggressively. Ben's fairways, greens, 2-putt, get out of there. And he had his first win. So, mate, shout out to you. Hopefully you're enjoying that. And pretty good lead up to the US Open. Which brings us to the core of this week's improvement pivot point. And usually I try to parlay that onto a live golf tournament. However, I've had a really interesting week. So we basically are a brand that's very fresh, very new. And because we don't push an agenda of a golf club, it allows us a lot of freedom. And it's the first time that some of our videos have kind of hinted on going this word viral, not quite viral, but it is viral. We've had a shitload of comments. And with comments comes some really positive. By the overwhelming majority have been positive. But I tell you, there's been a ton of really viscerally negative comments towards me and my brand, or our brand. And I wanted to just talk about it because I think it's healthy. And this comes from a really sincere place, which I'm really proud of because, look, the golf industry is a really funny little industry. It's a $90 billion industry. There's a ton of money at stake here. And for a brand like ours that has one goal, what is our goal? The reason I built Swing and Rosemary and I built our brand was because we realized that there was a lack of factual evidence in the industry, period. Whether it's the Scotty Cameron putter you buy for $600 that costs the manufacturer about $60 to produce. I met one of the chaps who builds them in China. Or whether it's the golf shaft that may be being charged $350. I used to get my golf shafts, I get them from True Temper now, great guys. I used to get my golf shafts from a different supplier, and I rang that supplier 2 years ago and said, hey, this shaft that I'm using that was usually $50 to buy is now $160, but it looks like it has the same characteristics. So I've been using a shaft frequency machine for about 20 years. And so we're going to get to some of these comments. And I basically put every one of my golf shafts that I build golf clubs into a shaft frequency machine. And basically it holds the club butt and it measures the oscillation. So a super soft shaft oscillates slower than a really stiff shaft that oscillates a little quicker. And so I can basically be pragmatic with how I build golf shafts and what it does for the golfer. And I said to this manufacturer, this golf shaft oscillates the same way. Why are you charging me $130 more from 1 year to another? And he said, oh, because we can. We painted it a different color and we now charge you $120 more. So there's a lot of people making a ton of money in golf. And what we try to do is ensure, and this is really important, that your golf ball, when you're on a green, is below the hole. That, if you want to cut through all the jargon, our job is to get you to control your ball flight. So you've got an uphill putt, hopefully 18 times around. Why? Because if you have uphill putts for 18 holes, you will break 75 every time you play golf, right? Our job is to control the ball flight, to leave yourself below the hole, to have an uphill putt, hopefully for birdie. But if you're not playing a ton or you're not quite as strong or for whatever reason, you take 3 to get onto a par 4, maybe you have a bogey putt. But the point is, we are a brand vertically integrated from building our own clubs to improving you to biomechanics. I've spent the best part of 12 years looking at biomechanics. I've been a PGA member for 25 years. So when all the comments come out and say, who is this guy? What right does he have? I think I've been in this industry quite a while to have a voice. You don't have to agree with that voice, but we wanted to explain how we see the golf industry, right? And so the improvement pivot point is to double back on a little bit of equipment, explaining how we teach the game. And so we're going to use the long drive champ as an example. We're going to use 2 members I just built clubs for 2 weeks ago who had a varying opinion. Not 2 members, 1 member and 1 non-member. And I just wanted to really double down on what we do here at Swing, why it is so different, how we are, unfortunately, it appears, disrupting the industry, which is causing a lot of angst with a lot of people. But if you can just kind of take the emotion out of it, you'll see that what we do is pretty factual. And so I think maybe I've gone a little too quickly on why, and so I wanted to explain it. So why don't we jump down into it and we'll get into our improvement pivot point. Okay, so let's bring this way back to what is our job at Swing. Our brand is a vertically integrated brand, so we're developing our own golf clubs. This is the only prototype. We should have ours in about 3-4 weeks, where we're trying to have a golfer improve every practice session they come to Swing or even use our platform online, or every time they go to the golf course for hopefully for 18 holes, they have an uphill putt for birdie or par. Our job is to control ball flight. All right, what does that look like? First shot of the day, I'm going to hit a high draw. So the ball's going to move from the right to the left. As a right-handed golfer, my hips will lead. As a 50-year-old male, I want to play golf till I'm 90. And so what my brand is about is improving every time you're working on either your body or your golf swing. So we have group training. We have Dr. Matty Mazur with physical therapy. And what we do here is understand who an individual is, what weaknesses and red flags in my language they have, and how does it stop them from swinging a golf club, playing pickleball, working on a Land Rover, whatever it is that has to get your body to do some different motions than walking around the street, right? And so I work bloody hard on my mobility and stability. Why? Because I spent 7 years on crutches. Here's my non-offset golf club, right? So I'm going to hit the first swing of the day. I'm going to hit a nice high draw. I'm going to do it, 60% because it's a first swing. But I'm going to come from the inside, hit a draw, and start the ball from the right to the left. Okay, I've come inside 8 degrees. The face was open 2 degrees. That ball's going to move from the right to the left, okay? And I've hit a pretty good golf shot. Now I'm going to use the same technique, and this is one of our improvement pivot points. To hit a fade, I am going to lead with my hips. My torso will trail. The club will be coming from the inside into impact. But then, because my stance is open to my face orientation, so I'm going to hit the screen with my arrow. Because my face is open, remember, club face always points where you want the ball to start. One of our comments, which was a negative comment, was, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about relative to fades and draws. I'm actually going to disagree, saying we are probably one of the world's leading commentary on how to hit draws and fades. When I did my apprenticeship, and even golf pros to this day believe they point the club face where you want the ball to finish. That's mathematically incorrect. So I'm going to lead with my hips. I will hit a fade. There I've come inside 8, face 2. Now this time, I'm going to have the same backswing. So the reason we have these noodles here is to keep the club working straight back. When I give lessons, most people, when they take the club straight back, they feel like it's going way outside and closed. But I'm going to hit a beautiful little fade here. So I'm going to point my club face slightly left of the white line. I'm going to set up square, and then I'm going to open my stance, tuck my tailbone, look at my target, and this time I'm going to shape the ball from the left to the right. Okay. There I've come outside 6, face 1. There I've hit a perfect little fade starting left and moving right. Now, what I thought I'd do today was explain that. So there I've hit a perfect draw and a perfect fade. Ball starts right and draws, ball starts left and fades. Our job at Swing is, I believe, every single golfer can play those 2 shots with any golf club. But unfortunately now the manufacturers get involved. And so I had a really interesting last couple of weeks. I built 2 sets of clubs for a father and son and for one of our members. And the father and son came to me and said, we heard you're doing some cool things. Can you build us some clubs? Absolutely love to. I suggested they only needed half a set of golf clubs. And so when you're starting to play golf, I've got half a set of golf clubs in my bag right now. I'm going to Ireland in 2 weeks to play with boys back home, and I'm only going to take half a set of irons. So I believe, unless it's a golf tournament, to keep things simple, it's better, unless it's a golf tournament, it's better to learn how to shape the ball. If the pin's on the right-hand side, I want to start the ball on the area of the green where it has the most miss. So if the pin's on the right, I'd like you to hit a little fade. And if the pin's on the left, I want you to hit a little draw. So I'd like you to shape the ball both ways. And so to learn how to play golf, I think it's better if you just play with half a set. And this is where our teaching also goes hand in hand with our club building. Most males come to me sitting in a seat, and this is 25 years of experience, guys. This is running the golf lab down at NYU Hospital with all these dots. And this is probably most notably, and where I believe we have the right to have a pretty strong voice in this golf industry, is I watch people and gear effect, 12 to 14 hours a day. And that's really important. What's gear effect? Gear effect is how the club interacts with the golf ball. So most males come to me sitting in a seat. I would say 90% of them fan the club open. And when a golfer fans the club open, the club moves behind them. So if I'm trying to hit this white line on the screen and the club is rotating behind them, unfortunately, we know facts. When there's a hip turn, the club trails. So for every action, hip rotation, there's an opposite and equal reaction. The club lags, face opens. And so for most golfers in the industry, they use a flat shoulder angle parallel to the ground. The club opens, And then if they're to use their hips, the face is going to be miles open to path. And so what my style of teaching and my style of club building is, we believe that the lighter the shaft, the faster the shaft will travel. That's pretty well irrefutable. We believe that the golf shaft should be extremely stiff. And this is one of the biggest points that we on social media when these videos went viral. And everyone's like, this guy's crazy, he's nuts. Well, not really. If you think about cause and effect in physics, the golf industry, most golf professionals will ask, how fast are you swinging the golf club? And to me, that's largely irrelevant, because if we look at ball flight is controlled by face, path, and low point and gear effect. So when we've got majority of the golf community, and certainly a lot of PGA teaching pros, teaching to round the club and open the face, if that golfer was to take the club back to here and now turn their hips, lead with their hips, the face would be open, the ball would shank. And so what we're noticing is when all these comments came from a negative point of view, what I believe that individual was trying to do, they latched onto one point. And so what we try to do is keep things super simple. My 3-wood is 35 years old with the same golf shaft. When I push down on them, what I should have said, I use a shaft frequency machine. So I built this myself about 30 plus years ago. This is an X-Flex 3-wood, okay? I know what that number comes out and oscillates at. But what I'm trying to do is just make sure is how I build them, because when a golf shaft comes out, it comes out as a blank. And then I usually cut around 5 inches off the tip. So what I'm actually testing is the flex point is way down the bottom of the golf shaft, which a frequency machine won't tell me. All a frequency machine tells me is how it oscillates, and we assign a number to stiffness. But what I've learned to do is work out that this 3-wood of mine has a slightly higher kick point, because I have to get the ball in the air because the ball's off the ground, than my driver that has a lower kick point. So for all those punters who hammered me pushing the club down, all I'm looking for is where the shaft bends. I know these are both F-flexes. On golf shaft, it's been my experience that, geez, 99% of golf shafts, what they're stamped is not what they are. And so because we frequency, and I can actually mathematically tell you how stiff a golf shaft is, I can guarantee that most golf shafts being fit today aren't exactly what they're stamped. This is based off 4 or 5 years of me dealing with guys on a daily basis looking at gear effect. So what we do better than most is we actually make sure our golf shafts are extremely precise. So let's get back to the 2 bags that I fit. When that father and son came into me, they said, we want to enjoy our golf and improve. And so we gave them hip flexor stretches. Why? Because when the pelvis can't tilt, it finds it difficult for the hips to turn. Said simply, if a hip flexor stretch is pretty aggressively strong in you guys, we know your hips are going to shut down and your torso is going to lead. So what does that do for a golf swing? Well, when the torso leads through impact, the face is going to be de-lofted. And when the face is de-lofted, the ball will start left. And so what the golf industry have done is they've softened their golf shafts. Okay, now I'm going to come to camera here so you can see this. And they've also offset the face. This is one of the highest and most expensive irons on the market. Won't mention their name. This is the Bentley of price, right? We're talking about $400 an iron. So one of the comments, or a few of the comments, was, well, the golf industry is doing well before swing came along. To that, totally fair call. But what we're noticing is factually here, this club in my left-hand side is one of the most expensive irons, in fact, I think it is, on the market. We'll leave the brand name off. And you'll see that this is their top of their line, and you'll see that the leading edge of their beautiful golf club is offset quite significantly from the leading edge of the golf shaft. Here's the new swing iron. This is the only prototype. And so the swing iron has 0 offset. I mean absolutely 0. There's non-offset. Why? because we actually design these. Chris and I designed these golf clubs. He's a graphic designer here in Brooklyn. And he and I actually mathematically went through the bounce of our wedges, which is 4 degrees of our low bounce, and 15 degrees of our high bounce, and 10 degrees of our middle bounce. Because we need different bounces in the industry because the topography is different. So for my members who go play Shinnecock, they need a really low bounce wedge because they're playing rock hard fairways most of the time. My Maidstone members out in Long Island, they actually don't have sprinklers on the golf course, so their course is rock hard depending on the weather. But if that same golfer plays Maidstone in the morning and happen to play Bethpage in the afternoon, they need a high bounce wedge to get out of the rough, right? And so what we come at here at Swing is to control your ball flight to leave yourself an uphill putt. We want you to be better an hour after you started practicing. So if I get back to this non-offset golf club, as most males, because their hip flexors are tight through environment or how they're built or accidents, trauma, injuries, if a male creates a golf swing using his torso, the club will decisively move left through impact. So this offset golf club will open the face to ensure that as that golfer leads with their torso, even though the club face is aiming way left, the face, because it's offset, will hit the ball right. So that's for a golfer who really doesn't want to improve as the years go on. That golfer will basically stay the same the entire golf journey. Now, that's different to what we believe. We believe every golfer, irrespective of whether they're my son at 7 or an 80-year-old who come to me and say, I want to improve. We had an 83-year-old who came to us last week, a lady who wants to improve her golf game. Just a phenomenal, phenomenal woman. And our job is to improve golfers. So if we put this offset club in their hand, the moment that golfer leads with their hips, the face is going to be open to target and open to path. That ball's going to start right and move right. And so if 90%, that's not an exaggeration, of golf clubs on the market are offset, our brand is based on getting people to improve. Therefore, our clubs are non-offset, not to be disruptive, but to know that factually, irrefutably, the face must be less than path at impact. Which leads me to the long drive champ, Kyle Berkshire. Now, this is fascinating. Here's another point where guys went absolutely ballistic at us on swing speed. I don't fit clubs based on swing speed. I think swing speed is bullshit. Load and force is the result of rotation. Let me say that again. If my left hip rotates left, my lead hip is a right-handed golfer for those listening, not watching. If my left hip turns left, for every action, the opposing action is my face opens because the shaft bends. Let's go straight to Kyle Berkshire. Here's a guy who is using ground force to create speed. And remember, swing isn't an improvement platform based on hitting the ball as far as humanly possible. Our platform, my entire ethos of being, is to present a business model where we have an uphill putt as often as we can, right? Let's break 75 every time we play golf. So Kyle, his left hip, and he is exactly like a baseballer swinging a baseball. Kyle's left hip is straightening in what we call full extension at impact. He goes from flexion to extension. That moves his center backwards through impact. His shoulders are opening 30 degrees at impact. He is hitting up on the ball 6, 7, 8, 9 degrees, depending on what driver he's got. His driver is 48 inches long. I hit my driver 300 yards and it's 43.5 inches in length. The standard manufacturer driver these days is 46 inches. We cut them down by about 1.5 inches. So getting back to the comment on how dare I not fit based on speed, no, I fit based on load and physics, Sir Isaac Newton's third law of motion. For every action, hip turn, there's a reaction. Face opens, club lags, shaft whips. Kyle is using whip to create a launch angle of 15 degrees with virtually no spin, because the less the ball spins, the longer it can stay in the air, right? Every time we have backspin, that backspin ultimately creates leverage, but will ultimately have some friction associated with it. So Kyle, and now let's go down the line, Kyle is leading with his hips. So into impact, he's coming from the inside, but as he hits the golf ball, his torso takes over, his lumbar spine is rotating, his shoulders are 30 degrees open, and his weight's falling back. Now, let's talk mathematically about that. So when guys hammer me on that, here's the response, and it's based in math. My left shoulder is the low point of arc. What that means is the club is moving down and to the right. The club will verbatim hit the ground where my sternum is. At my sternum, the club keeps going down to my left shoulder, which is low point. At low point, the club starts coming up. So if you watch my left hip, why we know Kyle will never be a tour player like I was, is because as Kyle's hips rotate, they rotate backwards. That sends his club face left. That's why he offsets that club face left with a grip that is going to be super strong and opens the face. We're not saying it's wrong, but his job is to hit a driver 500 yards. Bring it back to our job is to ensure you guys and girls control ball flight, hit it 300 yards if you can, but have an uphill putt for 18 holes of a round of golf. So to get nasty at me saying, how can I not fit on speed, is because speed is irrelevant. We fit knowing that golf must be a game created through hip mobility. Our entire being is getting you to use your hips to turn to take pressure away from the lumbar spine. I'm going to guarantee you that if you start swinging like Kyle with this crazy torso bend, your right side of your lumbar spine will get compressed like Will Zalatoris. When one of the big brands was on video last week saying this is side bend, one of the main players in the golf industry was saying, this is side bend, this is what Tiger does. No, that's not side bend. Side bend is when the spinal cord remains vertical and the rib cage side bends. This is side bend, not side bend. If you side torso have motion through impact looking this way, you will hurt your back. So our job is to control low point, face, path, and gear effect. And let's quickly talk about gear effect. When you've got a golf club that is super wide on the sole, gear effect is really simple physics. And actually, let's use a driver because it's easier to explain. When the center of the mass differs from where the club is struck, gear effect occurs. So when those few comments got really nasty at me on how I said about motion or how I taught about club fitting, you can't just take gear effect, you can't just take path, you can't just take face, and you can't just take speed. You've got to look at the whole picture. So gear effect occurs if said golfer hits the middle of the face, the reaction is very minimal. When said golfer hits the outer rim of a mass, when the mass center is different to where the strike is occurring, gear effect occurs. What's gear effect? When the club is hitting the toe, because you've got 100 miles an hour for shits and giggles, hitting the toe of the club rotates for a right-handed golfer when struck in the toe clockwise. That puts a counterclockwise spin on the ball. So the manufacturers have come out with twist face. So as you hit the toe, which is most males, because most males use their torso, when you use your torso, the club comes outside in. When the club comes outside in, you will hit the toe of the golf club. What happens is they've pointed the face more right. So as the ball starts more right, it hooks back to the midline. So in the instance of hitting that golf shot, gear effect, a whippy golf shaft, will help you better in that moment. But if you keep swinging outside in, over a period of months, your golf game will never improve and you will hurt your back. So when those few pundits get really negative on me on non-offset golf clubs, or why do I fit most males and ladies into an X Flex, my entire ethos is based around one principle. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So as I disassociate my hips, my hip leads, my arms trail, and the face opens. So the whippier the golf shaft, the more the face opens. So when Kyle hits a golf shot, his torso is 30 to 40 degrees open, but he's gripping the club in a very strong manner, which opens the face. And if I keep the club square to my body and I lead with my shoulders 40 degrees open, the club face is straight left. When Kyle's hitting that golf shot, if he leads with his torso through impact, say it again, hips are leading, torso's trailing, then as he hits the golf ball, his hips stop, his left hip extends, that shuts down his hip rotation, and then his torso spins. If I keep the club square to my body, that's 50 yards left. But if I strengthen my grip and open my face, and he's using whip to create speed, then if you time it just right, it's perfect. That's why they're given 4 or 5 long drive opportunities to get one ball. That's not going to work to break 75 every time you play golf. If your torso, if your sternum, which is where the club will hit the ground, is moving back because the left hip is hyperextending, you're going to hit behind the ball all day long. So our job to bring this way back is to improve golfers so they can break 75 and leave it below the hole for 18 holes around. We club fit not on speed, because I believe that to be incorrect, on load. We club fit because we don't want to use gear effect. I want you to hit the ball in the middle of the face. We have brand new golfers who've been with us 12 months who are now starting to shoot even par for 9 holes. They won't do it for 18 holes. It'll take them a year or so. But they're having 9 holes even par. Why? Because we come from the inside, we use our hips, we quieten our torso, and we don't rely on gear effect to control ball flight. The clubs we fit here don't move very much. Therefore, if the face doesn't move, guess what? You control where the ball starts. And so my advice is to make this come full circle. Please don't look at one data point, face or path or gear effect or speed or what it's stamped on the golf shaft. You've got to look at the whole picture to get a set of clubs that's right for you. What do we know? If the hips lead the torso, we don't have back pain, we increase speed, we control club face, and we control ball flight. And so working backwards, that's what Rosemary and I did with this brand, is we grab the answer, hips lead hands, get rid of gear effect, and then we designed a business model based on the fact that Sir Isaac Newton's pretty smart and got it right. For every action, there's an opposite reaction. Just remember, the new website dropped last week. Check it out. The newsletter comes out Fridays, and please share it to your mates. Remember, we're a fresh new brand who have looked at golf in a different way. Peter, remember, you can absolutely own your swing with the work you put into your game on your body, here with your clubs, and how to control your ball flight, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.